Welcome to Spoken Injustice, where we put the criminal justice system in the dock. If you recall in our opening note, when reporting some of the criticisms raised against the Criminal Cases Review Commission, or CCRC for short, the public body responsible for investigating wrongful convictions, which you can find in the link below, we mentioned that some critics have said that the CCRC has failed to refer obvious miscarriages of justice. Is the case of Michael Stone one of them? Let's try to find out. But before looking at Mr. Stone's case, here are my usual reminders to like this video to allow YouTube to circulate it to a wider audience. And consider subscribing so that we can continue bringing you the latest news affecting and informing our criminal justice system. Thank you. So let's look at Mr. Stone's case. Mr. Stone was convicted on retrial and sentenced to life imprisonment in October 2001 at Nottingham Crown Court for the murders of Dr. Lynn Russell and her daughter Megan, 6 years old, and the attempted murder of her older daughter, Josie Russell, 9-year-old, who sustained serious injuries. The crimes shocked the entire nation in 1996. By discussing this case, we do not mean to cause any distress to the direct or indirect victims of this case, to whom we send our warmest regards. Arguably, it is in their interest too to ascertain that the person paying for these unspeakable crimes is indeed the true perpetrator. The trial relied heavily on circumstantial evidence, with the exception of an alleged confession by Stone to another prisoner. We will look into this in more detail shortly, so do follow us until the end. Additionally, there was no forensic evidence linking Stone to the murders. In May and June 2017, the case was scrutinized in a two-part BBC Two documentary entitled The Chillenden Murders, in which a team of independent experts with decades of experience in the criminal justice system re-examine the evidence. According to this documentary, when in his sentencing remarks the judge told Mr. Stone there can't be anyone in this country who does not understand the horror of these offences, Mr. Stone is said to have shouted in open court, "It wasn't me, Your Honour, I didn't do it." He has always maintained his innocence. The documentary raised doubts about the motive behind the crimes, as well as all other circumstantial evidence adduced against Stone, such as Stone's knowledge of the area, a bootlace or tourniquet found at the scene, a witness who claimed to have seen Stone on the day after the murder wearing a top with blood stains on it. We will not examine this here, and if of interest, the documentary is accessible on BBC iPlayer, which Flora, our editor and producer, has kindly linked in the description below. For ease, we will focus only on one piece of evidence which was considered crucial and said to have sealed Stone's fate. That was the witness testimony of Damien Daly, who was a prisoner detained in the same prison where Stone was also detained. There were, in fact, several prisoners who claimed that Stone had confessed the murders to them. However, some were discredited and caused Stone's first conviction being overturned and a retrial ordered. By the time Stone's second trial took place, Daly was the only one relied upon by the prosecution. Daly claimed that Stone confessed to him through a pipe in the wall of their adjoining cells. However, the documentary cast doubt on this alleged confession, revealing first that Stone successfully applied to the governor of the prison in which he was detained to be placed into segregation due to the fact that there had been prisoners claiming that he had confessed to them. Therefore, the confession to Daly appears to be at odds with this request. Secondly, and more poignantly, the independent panel took the view that to make this a compelling evidence, Daly's witness statement must include a piece of information that was not in the public domain. So the statement was scrutinized by the panel to check indeed whether it contained such a piece of information. In his statement, Daly claimed, amongst other things, that Stone was annoyed about being picked up at an ID parade. The prosecution claimed that this must have referred to an ID parade which took place the day before the alleged confession and which was attended by the only surviving victim and another witness. Though neither of them positively identified Stone, the witness indicated that Stone looked familiar. The prosecution stated that this latter piece of information was not available in the press. However, the panel found that though the outcome of the ID parade was indeed not known to the press, the fact that there was an ID parade was a story run in the press on the day Daly said that Stone had allegedly confessed, including a story in the Mirror, which is the newspaper Daly said to have had in his cell. Finally, though Daly stated that he had nothing to gain from his testimony, the documentary panel found, though not through reliable sources, that 2 cases against Daly were discounted by the police immediately before his testimony against Stone. In his summing up at the second trial, the judge stated something along these lines that everything else in the case is circumstantial. You can only convict this man if you accept Daly's evidence as true. Though doubts were raised, Daly stuck to his story, and allegations that he lied formed grounds of 2 subsequent appeals, which were both unsuccessful. However, and critically, those appeals revealed an interesting and relevant piece of information. That is that more sophisticated forensic analysis was conducted on the towels found at the scene, which revealed the presence of a complex DNA profile, i.e. a mixture of profiles, and crucially, one belonging to an unknown male. No portion or components of the DNA profile matched Stone's. Having cast doubt on all the circumstantial evidence and in light of the new forensic analysis results, the documentary panel concluded that Stone's conviction hangs on a very delicate thread, namely the testimony of a man who is currently serving life in prison for murder. But the documentary panel went further, as it also examined a possible link of these murders to Levi Belfield, who you will probably be familiar with and who is currently serving multiple life sentences for a series of murders, including a 13-year-old girl. The link was made in relation to the nature of the attacks, particularly the infliction of blunt force trauma to victims' head, which is not only rare, but a common denominator to the murders of which Belfield was convicted. The panel investigating further first spoke to the detective who investigated the possible link of this murder to Belfield, and he confirmed that though the link was looked into, there was a solid alibi by Belfield's then girlfriend, who claims he had been with her on that day. However, he confirmed that the nature of the attack is extremely rare and that a research they conducted on attacks of this nature, which occurred between 1992 and 2002 in the Greater London area, could all bar one be realistically linked to Belfield. The panel also talked to Belfield's girlfriend. She first confirmed that at the time of the Chillenden murders, she owned a beige car. This is an important element because several witnesses at the crime scene saw, just after the murder had taken place, an angry man in a beige car. No beige car was ever linked forensically or otherwise to Stone. She claims that Belfield used her car one night, but that he claimed the car had been stolen from a car park on the night he borrowed it. She believes that the car was apparently subsequently found burnt out, but she could not be sure. However, she was adamant that on the 9th of July 1996, the date when the murder occurred, Belfield was with her all day, from the time they'd woken up to the time they went to bed. And she remembers it very well because it was in fact her birthday. Though she also said that she believes that that day was either a Friday or a Saturday. But in fact, the panel confirmed that it was a Tuesday. Could she be mistaken on the day? Again, the documentary panel did not stop there. They requested Belfield's DNA sample, which she declined. However, members of Belfield's family provided DNA samples. The panel's expert was able to drive Belfield's profile from the samples obtained and compared it to the unknown DNA profile found on the towels in the Chillenden murders. She found there were 3 components that match Belfield's profile, as opposed to no components at all matching Stone's. This means that Belfield could not be excluded to have contributed to that DNA mixture. Though the expert did recognize that this in itself is not a strong evidence. The expert found that a better chance of having a stronger match would be to analyze the bootlace or tourniquet found at the scene. However, the analysis could not be carried out, as not much is left of that bootlace believed to have either been lost or exhaustive testing reduced it to mere strands. Belfield is said to have confessed to these murders and then retracted his confession several times. However, in April 2023, several press releases confirmed that Belfield's solicitor has said her client is adamant he is responsible for these murders and feels he needs to take responsibility. We understand that Belfield's claims were at the heart of the latest application made by Stone to the CCRC. However, on the 13th of July 2023, the CCRC released the following statement. Following a comprehensive review, the Criminal Cases Review Commission has concluded that there is no real possibility that the Court of Appeal would overturn the convictions of Michael Stone for murder and attempted murder. The CCRC has reasoned the decision as follows. Where a jury has chosen to convict a defendant, the Court of Appeal will only interfere if it can be shown that the conviction is unsafe. Our role is not to retry a case, but to consider whether there is new evidence or argument which may lead a real possibility that the Court of Appeal would quash the conviction. We have identified no credible new evidence or information that raises a real possibility that Mr. Stone's conviction will not be upheld upon a reference to the Court of Appeal. Though the CCRC does not comment on the operational detail of its work, it made clear that reports of alternative events and suspects were reviewed, and the interviews took place with officers from several police forces and forensic tests were carried out. If by this the CCRC means that the police reopened the case and conducted new DNA analysis which positively excluded Belfield's claim, then the rejection of Stone's application may be fair in light of the CCRC limited test of real possibility. However, if Belfield's claims were discounted simply because they came from a convicted murderer, can we accept that the decision to refuse Stone's application is justified? Stone's conviction stands still today thanks to the testimony of a prisoner to whom Stone has supposedly confessed, who is a convicted murderer himself serving a life sentence. One can argue that if Belfield's confession cannot be relied upon to declare Stone's conviction unsafe, due to the fact that he is an unreliable convicted criminal, surely the same argument should be used in relation to Daly's testimony, which served to convict him. I hope you have found this video interesting, and if so, please hit the like button. Also, consider subscribing if you have not done so already, so that we can bring to you leading experts in the area to elucidate some of the most problematic issues involved. And finally, join our networking hub at spokeninjustice.net to have your say as to the future content of this channel. Join us again next week. We look forward to usher you as we sit and rise in this unique trial.